Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody. It's another Technique Tuesday. If you haven't met me before, my name is Barb and I run the long arms in this lovely establishment. Anyway, today, and actually for the next 3 Tuesdays, we are going to give you everything you could possibly want to know about quilting your quilt on your domestic machine. So free motion quilting on a domestic machine, and hopefully by the end of the total of 4 weeks, you're just going to be a rip-roaring through those stitches like nobody knows. So first of all, the very first step you want to do is prepare your sewing machine for free motion quilting. And I've got 3 different sewing machines set out here just to show you that you can free motion on pretty much anything. So this guy is one of our little Burnett's. It says, "Take me home today." Great little basic machine. I don't even have a cord plugged into it right now. But you can free motion on a machine like this. The first thing you want to do when you're starting, you want to do free motion on any of your domestic machines, is you want to drop your feed dogs. In case you don't know, feed dogs are these little rough things underneath your presser foot, and what they do under ordinary circumstances is they grab your fabric and pull it along. Grab your fabric and pull it along. But if we want to quilt like this, we don't want those things hanging onto our fabric, so we want to get them out of the way. So on our little Burnett here, we just pop our little accessory tray off, and in the back, there's a little lever button. So you just slide that over, and that locks those feed dogs out of the way, so they're not going to be pulling on our fabric. That's one way. This one, little bit bigger Bernina. There you go. I've got it turned the other way, just so that you can see here are the feed dogs. I don't know how well you can see that, but if I rotate the flywheel, you can actually see them pop up. So those are your feed dogs. So on this machine, the button is here on the side. So when I push that, those things drop down and we have a smoother plate. Okay, now when we come over here, this is our brother Innova's 3050, BQ 3050. It also says, "Take me home today." This is a great machine for free motioning. First of all, you can see one of its advantages. It's got a lot more throat space here. But when you get up into the higher end machines, the fully electronic, they'll often just have a little electronic button right there. That's all you do. You don't even see those move. So that is now set for free motion. So we have 1, 2, 3 machines, 3 slightly different ways of dropping our feed dogs. There's actually another way of getting rid of those feed dogs. If you are sewing on maybe a vintage machine, or I happen to have a straight stitch machine at home, and I'm going, "Where's the button? Where's the button?" Oh, right. It actually has a thicker needle plate that you replace that lifts your fabric up above the feed dogs. So they're still moving, but they're not touching the fabric. So all kinds of ways. Our education team leader, Linda Daniluk, has done a lot of teaching on free motion quilting. And she left me a little note. She says she never bothers to drop her feed dogs. I've always done that. I just don't like the idea of them kind of rubbing. But you can try it both ways and see which you prefer the stitches from. So we're ready to go. We got our feed dogs down. What's next? Well, you're going to need a free motion foot for your machine. And I think what's going to be easiest is I'm going to pull them out and just hold them up. So this one is the free motion foot for the Burnett. Basically, sometimes your machines will call them a darning foot. Sometimes they'll call it a free motion foot. The principle is pretty much the same. It has an open toe or a closed toe, and it has nothing underneath to catch the fabric. So this one is specifically for the Burnett. These feet are kind of machine specific, but there we go. A lot of them are going to look, which way? That way. Going to look like this. Some machines will call them a darning foot. And this again is a Bernina foot. There. You can see it's got just a round hole. It's fairly small, about 1/4 of an inch. Okay. And then on the Brother, Gwen gave me this lovely bag of all kinds of goodies. So you have some choices when it comes to free motion. I don't know if you noticed when I pressed my free motion button, I'm going to hit it again. That machine's telling me I want the J foot. That's for regular sewing. But if I touch that, it automatically switches. It tells me I want a C foot. And that's this little guy. Just a tiny little hole on that one. Very easy to change. So that's your basic free motion foot for the Brother. However, you could also use something that looks very much like that first foot for the Burnett. That would work as well. That's an open toe, so it lets you see where you're going a little bit more. And my personal favorite for free motion quilting on a lot of machines is going to look pretty much like this guy. Plastic, see-through. I know you can get them to fit the Berninas, but I like this because when you're quilting over those lumps and bumps, it just sort of rides over. You'll notice that this one has some circles marked on it, and I know the Bernina one is actually called an echo quilting foot. So a specific distance from your needle point to the edge of the foot lets you go around things an even distance. But these are great little feet, these plastic ones. Okay, so we have our machine set and we have our feet ready. Now, one thing I wanted to point out to you, and I think it's week 3 we're actually going to talk about threads. Free motion quilting can really mess up your tension. So the Brother here and our little Burnett both have drop-in bobbin cases. They're just like that. There's not much we can do to adjust the bobbin tension in our machine. You can sometimes get a straight stitch needle plate or a different bobbin case, but what you got is what you got with those. This guy, and I'll pull the bobbin case on the mid-range Bernina, and I'm sure on some other brands of machines as well. Yeah, that guy, he goes backwards to the other. So if you have a bobbin case that looks like this, that goes into the front of your machine, you can try it with your thread in the usual position. But I've had better luck. I don't know how well you can see that. There's a little tiny hole right in, this is called the pigtail of your machine, of your bobbin case. And sometimes it helps with that bobbin tension to run your thread, turn it over, COVID masks means we can't spit on the thread. So if you thread the thread through that pigtail, it can put a little additional tension on your thread and get rid of some of those goobers that we sometimes get when we're free motion quilting. Billy's asking for free motion quilting. Should I switch to my straight stitch throat plate, or can I leave my zigzag one on? I would, just because I hate changing the throat plates, but try it with the zigzag one on. But the straight stitch throat plate is often a good idea because it helps to keep that thread centered in under the needle. It doesn't tend to pull it out as much. So yeah, by all means, switch to that. It will be like the sky. Oh, there we go. I'll hold that really close. Right in there, there's a single hole instead of the elongated one that we use in case we want to do zigzag stitches. If you switch plates, make sure, write yourself a big note on bright pink paper and stick it on the front of your machine to remind you to switch the needle plates when you're finished with your free motion quilting, because there's nothing worse than setting your machine to zigzag and having the straight stitch plate on. Okay, so we've got the machine set, we've got the bobbin set, and we have our free motion foot on. So the next thing you would want to do is a test run, just to make sure you get all those tensions set. And when we talk about thread in a couple of weeks, we'll actually be doing some sewing and we'll be doing some testing, and I can show you what good tension and bad tension looks like. Okay, so we're all set to go. What's next? We have a lot of wonderful tools that are going to be a help for you when it comes to free motion quilting. Obviously, Miss Dawn's made us a beautiful display again. Lots of books. Books help with the second part of the process, which is not the physical doing, it's the figuring out what do I quilt on it. As far as the physical stuff, one thing that is almost a necessity, called a Supreme slider. And I'm going to open this one up. Maybe you've seen us demonstrate this guy before on one of our other things. So it's kind of like a clingy pink surface and then a super slick top surface. So if you have a machine where your table, maybe you have your machine like I do set into a table at home. So this isn't really slippery. And we do kind of want to be able to move our fabric easily. This little guy goes right in here, and you can see how it's clinging. I have to lift it to move it. Line it up. Expose your space here for your needle. And it clings to the bed of your machine, but your fabric just sort of slides around beautifully on it. Look at this guy. We'll just take the one piece of fabric. Swoop-de-doop-de-doop. Makes a big difference in how much cramp you get in your shoulders on that one. So Supreme slider. This is the smaller size, but I stole this out of receiving. We just got the big guys back in like this. So if you have a larger bed on your machine or you're set down into a table, this guy is 11.5 by 17 inches. So that is going to give you lots and lots of slippery space to move that fabric in. Anything we can do that's going to cut down on the drag on our fabric is going to be a help. So now we've got our Supreme slider on. This little piece of fabric is pretty easy to move around. I don't think I'd have any trouble quilting, you know, a pin cushion maybe even a placemat. But it does help to have, just as we want the fabric to slide on our Supreme slider, we want to have something to not slide on the top. So I think everybody's familiar, if you've done anything with free motion, these guys, Mushingers. So basically they're gloves, and they have little rubber tips in the fingers, and they give you a better grasp on your fabric sandwich. However, over the years, the gloves work. They're not my favorite thing, because if I want to bite my chocolate chip cookie, I have to take my glove off. Sometimes if I want to remove that safety pin that we've basted with, you gotta take the glove off. So they can be a little bit awkward to use. So then I tried those little rubber fingertips that they sell in like Staples and things for paper. You put one on each finger, and that kind of worked okay. I still had trouble with opening the pins with those guys on though. There's also a product, and I checked out front, we don't have any right now, but it's like a silicone that you can put on your hands to make your fingers sticky. And that works pretty good, but it tends to wear off really fast. Then I went to the grocery store and I bought little pieces of shelf liner that you can set down right on your fabric. And that was okay because they would cling to the fabric, you could move them around, but they were still flat. Then Handy Quilter came out with these guys. These are worth every single penny if you're going to do any free motion quilting. Everybody I show these to who has tested them has bought them. They're called Sweet Spots. You can see the size of them. They have kind of a rubbery, tacky sort of surface on them. And you just set them. I'm going to pretend this is a quilt sandwich. How about that? You set these guys on your quilt sandwich. You put your hands over them. Now immediately you can see, we'll move this guy. If I'm trying to hold that quilt sandwich, my fingers are kind of clenching like this. And after a while, you start to feel it all up your arm. And the minute you put this guy under your hand is in a much more natural position, and away you go. You need to move, you just move it over. They are spectacular for free motion quilting. Handy Quilter Sweet Spots. One of the best inventions ever come up with for free motion quilting. What other fun things? You know, it's such a basic process. That's really about it. How about that? Well, perhaps we should talk about the needles that we use in our machines when we're free motion quilting. You can find sewing machine needles labeled quilting, but they aren't necessarily meant for sewing all those layers of fabric together. They're, for other things. So what we use in the long arms, what Linda Danlock recommends, is switching to a slightly larger needle, something like a size 16. Okay, it's going to take your thread well, and once you get going, you're going to have the strength of needle there to pierce all 3 layers of your fabric sandwich without deflecting. You're going to get a little better stitch quality. So I would recommend just a basic size 16 needle, variable depending on what thread you're using, and maybe when we get round to the thread class, we're going to do a little bit with some heavier threads or some lighter threads to let you see what the difference they make to your quilt sandwich will be. But yeah, definitely. The other thing that I kind of skipped past because with your feed dogs down, you really don't have a stitch length. Is some quilters like to set their stitch length on their sewing machine down to 0. I think it's just so that the machine doesn't think it's supposed to be moving the fabric. I've never really bothered with it on a basic machine. It seems to work just fine one way or the other. But that is, if you're having a little trouble with your tension in your free motion quilting, you can always try that. Set your stitch length down to 0 and just see what sort of difference that makes. All right. Thank you for joining us. As always, we want you to stay safe, stay calm, and stay kind, everybody. Have a good one. Enjoy the weather. It's gradually getting to spring out there.